Hello, my friends and fellow patriots. This morning, Joe Biden claimed victory in the US presidential election after several media outlets declared him the victor. I don't know who needs to know this, but Joe Biden doesn't declare who the winner is. CNN doesn't declare who the winner is, and Fox News certainly do not declare who the winner is. There's a process that needs to be carried out, which involves investigating the several instances of fraud, problems in voting, and resolving those judicial cases before seeing a victor declared. But regardless of this, what we see is the mainstream media overstepping their mark yet again and becoming partisan actors. Imagine if Trump wins his court cases. The Dems will be out in the streets because they believe they've already won. But even worse, we see a disgusting betrayal. We see establishment figures on the right already sticking the knife into Donald Trump's back. Fox News, I'm looking at you. Today's episode, we're going to be examining not only yet more media overreach and biased actions, but the betrayal of Donald Trump by establishment Republicans. But one media outlet you can trust, however, is the one you're watching. This is Political, still going on with our Election 2020 series. We thought it'd be finished a few days ago, but it isn't. Please do subscribe if you enjoy the videos. Welcome to everyone who subscribed recently. Please do leave a like if you like the content, and leave a comment if you have an opinion on it. Tell us what you think. And the first thing we have for you, it's a bit of a funny. We have ABC News here, who have tweeted that in London, a city close to our hearts, Ian, we were releasing fireworks for the election of Joe Biden. This is, of course, utterly untrue. It's a national holiday called Guy Fawkes Night or Bonfire Night, where we celebrate the failure of a plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament. Ian, is this media incompetence or is this media maliciousness?
Well, I think if this isn't, I mean, maybe it's intentional. Maybe they have intentionally taken advantage of the situation to give the impression to, American viewers that would understandably be ignorant of such a holiday that's only celebrated here. Or maybe it's just lazy journalism, and it epitomizes the same lazy journalism that we've come to expect from these mainstream media outlets in America. Never doing their fact checking, never doing the due process, and making sure that all the stories that they put out are accurate. It could also be maybe here in the UK, maybe we were celebrating Joe Biden's victory by letting off these fireworks because, we were kind of linking that to Guy Fawkes' attempt to subvert the leadership. And, we looked at what Joe Biden's doing and we said, oh, yeah, that kind of matches. That's happening. That's the same thing. So I think it's appropriate. Who knows?
He didn't quite try to blow up the Houses of Parliament, but he's damn near close.
But yeah, let's move on anyway. So as you were saying, like this abandonment of the establishment right towards Donald Trump. As you said, it's the Constitution does not say, CNN. When CNN project the winner of the presidential election, that's who the winner is. The president is decided by the Electoral College voters, and they do not convene until December 14th, I think it is, and they have a week to vote from that period. So still five or 6 weeks away at this point. But those who point that out and say that, hey, Donald Trump's still got a case here, he has a right to take legal action, they're now being cancelled. The right has adopted cancel culture, it seems, or at least Fox News have. So over this weekend, those who do tune into Fox News would have potentially watched Justice with Jeanine Pirro on, I think it was a Saturday, but they were cancelled. And apparently the reason is because of her support for Trump. So for those who might not have tuned in to did not see Fox News Justice with Jeanine Pirro on Saturday night, sources told Newsmax the show was suspended over a spat on the network's coverage of Donald Trump. Sources close to the network tell Newsmax because she made a very staunch defense of Donald Trump and wanted to expose the vote fraud that took place in the election, Fox News decided not to air her show. It had extended coverage of Democrats Joe Biden's acceptance speech of a contested election. Sources give no inclination of whether the network is going to keep the show going, but we hear she was suspended for this weekend at least. And of course, Fox News critically was the first, and for a long time, on election day, the only news organization to call the state of Arizona for Biden. And Arizona's 11 votes could become critical as things go on, depending if, there's any movement in the apparent winners on these recounts and legal cases. So what do you make of all this?
Well, I mean, it's very, very clear that they have an agenda, don't they? And I don't know why Fox appears, after, okay, they were criticized Trump throughout the last 4 years, but in general, they kind of stuck to the true path, didn't they? But I don't get why they're selling him out right now, because what they're doing, you have a very mainstream journalist with a very large audience trying to look into a story that, if true, would be a massive in American politics. That is electoral fraud, significant electoral fraud, or mistakes, or whatever it might be, which could potentially swing the balance in one of the tightest elections in history. Okay, why are they censoring that? Like, what gives them the right to censor that story? And if you go and look on the other mainstream media outlets, there isn't a hint of this story. Why isn't CNN reporting on their competitors cancelling this show for political reasons? It doesn't make sense to me. But it ties into a larger theme, okay? Because we've seen this with the Hunter Biden story. Money being funneled into Joe Biden's pocket via his son from China and other sources. How can you censor that? Then you look in the social media, okay, and they've censored things continuously over the last 2 weeks. Go on Donald Trump's profile and tell me how many censored tweets they are. He's the president of the United States, and they're refute almost every single tweet he makes is censored. That's wrong. Who gave them the right to do that? I think it's utterly contemptuous what they're doing.
I think we've somewhat become accepting, haven't we, in many ways of what Twitter's doing. But when you lay it out in that context, they're censoring or adding extra bits to his tweets. I mean, like you say, he's the president, and he deserves to be able to communicate with the electorate directly without having Twitter, a private company, sure, but they're, like we've talked about this, they're protected under Section 230, as a platform, not a publisher. And they're acting like a publisher. And not only that, they're censoring the actual president of the United States. But
Ian, even if he wasn't the president, okay, imagine this was happening to Joe Biden. We'd still be up in arms about this because it shouldn't be happening in an electoral democracy. Imagine if, the big tech was censoring stories critical about Donald Trump. We would still be angry at this. This shouldn't happen, okay? Imagine if CNN was taking shows off the air for discussing a story that might be in Biden's favor. We'd be criticizing that because it shouldn't be happening. I think some people don't like Donald Trump, and they are letting their institutions and their democracy be subverted simply because, Trump's a bad guy, according to them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I absolutely 100% agree with that sentiment. And I just think, that just going back to this with Fox News and what's happening with Jeanine Pirro, obviously she wanted to make a case that, hey, listen, the election's not actually over yet just because the news networks have declared it or projected it, the winner or whatever, it's not over. I agree with that sentiment. Listen, the likelihood is on Inauguration Day, on the 20th of January next year, Joe Biden will probably be inaugurated as the 46th president. But until then, Trump has a right to contest the election, and he has a right to make a legal case. And until we see the outcome of those legal cases, I will withhold judgment. I don't know whether or not he has a strong case. But the problem is I've seen enough voting irregularities that I think an investigation is justified. And it may turn out, that we already know that there is, to some extent, some illegitimate votes. We've seen them. People have singled them out. Dead people voting in Michigan and people in Nevada that don't live there voting in Nevada. Those are just some of them. It may turn out that it's not enough to really matter. but it may turn out that it is. So that's what the legal process is there for. That will happen. Trump says that's going to begin on Monday, that they're really going to put forward these cases on Monday. So we need to wait to see what happens. But this is not the first time that an election has been contested on legal grounds. It happens actually every now and again in very close elections. Obviously, we saw it with Bush and Gore just 20 years ago. And, it's the job of the press to report on that and say, look, here's what's happening. This is the legal case that's been put forward, and here's the process that will go about. That's their job to do that, inform people what's happening. The press don't decide who the winner is.
It's so important that they do that, because part of and I said this in the last couple of videos too, part of the whole process of democracy is the loser of an election accepting that they've lost fairly. Okay, but how can you turn around to a Trump fan or Trump himself, as a matter of fact, and expect him to concede the election when there's several outstanding legal cases, when he's fairly certain that voter fraud has taken place, even if you don't agree with that? How can you expect any of them to treat the system seriously or to concede in good graces before these things are resolved? It's in the Democrats' interest to cover this. It's in the mainstream media's mandate. They have a special responsibility to cover this, but they're abandoning their duties simply because of partisanship. And, can you imagine? It will be the Democrats blaming Trump fans after this for not accepting the election when they've done nothing to facilitate that.
Yeah. As well, I feel as though things are weighing in on people's minds that really shouldn't be that important, but they are. Because, listen, we know for 4 years, those on the left, or let's just say the Democrats or whatever, I don't want to characterize people in a big group because I'm sure not everyone thought this way, but for 4 years, basically, many people that support Democrats and the Democrats themselves were complaining and saying that Trump did not win legitimately in 2016. And they were complaining and moaning about that for 4 years and did not provide any evidence for it in those 4 years. They had this giant investigation, the Mueller report, that nothing came to fruition from that. And they had all these they had the phony impeachment process that they brought forward. And, we called them out on that and said, you just need to accept the election, and rightfully so. And now I think a lot of people are afraid to support Donald Trump in just his effort to fight this legally, which he has absolutely every right to do. You don't have to pass judgment and say he's right and say, oh, yeah, there absolutely is fraud until you see the evidence for yourself. But you just say, well, I support him in his decision to fight it legally. But I think people are afraid to even say that because they're afraid of now being characterized in the same way that they characterized those on the left when Donald Trump won his first time. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be afraid of that. There's absolutely nothing wrong in saying that you support the president in his attempt to, fight a legal case if he believes that there's fraud going on. And we will see, hopefully, if there's due process, we will see whether that is the case.
Absolutely. And you know what I'd like to see? Did you see Joe Biden's victory speech in it, where he talks about reaching out to Trump supporters and characterizing them not as enemies anymore but as Americans? Those are nice words, Joe. But what he's actually doing, he's holding a so-called victory speech before those political opponents have rightfully accepted the loss. Okay, so what I would like to see from Joe Biden, if he truly wants to be a president for the American people, would be to say, no, I'm not going to accept victory until this is all taken care of, until my opponent graciously concedes, to treat Trump supporters seriously so I can govern for them going forward. I think that would be an amazing thing for him to do, and that would win him a lot of respect for me. But time and time again, he has an opportunity to lead. He has an opportunity to do the right thing. It's not there because he's not a great man. He's not a great politician. I don't think he'll be a great president.
Well, I hope he is a great president, but I don't think he will be. I hope he is. But I just want to add to that then very quickly. It has bothered me, this call for unity or whatever and healing and all of this, and I just think to myself, where was that for 4 years? The Democrats could have rallied behind the president and said, yeah, listen, we're really, really disappointed that Hillary Clinton lost, but he's the president now, and we're going to hope he does a fantastic job. They never did that. They never did that. There was no attempt to bring unity, and there was no attempt to, kind of close up that gap between the left and the right or whatever, and remove some of the divisions and the polarization. There was no attempt to do that. So when Joe Biden says, "Oh yeah, listen, this is going to be now. We're gonna bring it's time for healing, and we should come together and not see each other as enemies," and it's like, yeah, but on Biden, in your campaign, you call Trump fans like chumps and ugly, and and all of the insults that were thrown at Trump fans for years and years and years, and they still have them now, and it all comes back to this, and I feel like we always come back to this. It's the idea on the left that they just are virtuous, moralistically right. Anyone that disagrees with them must be evil, so they do not need to hold themselves to these same standards because Trump fans are just evil, and that's it. So no, we shouldn't try and close the divide between us. We shouldn't try and do that because they're just bad people, and then that's it. So we don't need to do that, and they honestly believe 50% of voters, or roughly 50% of voters, are just bad people, and there's no hope. I don't see how there will ever be any healing if that's, I didn't feel compelled to go and burn down a McDonald's or whatever when Joe Biden was announced to win, because I'm disappointed, but I'm not going to go and start rioting over it. I just continue to argue my case.
So there you have it, folks. A condemnation of the left from Political. Who would have guessed it? Thank you so much for watching, guys. Again, please do subscribe if you enjoyed the content. If you want to join our community, if you want to be amongst like-minded people, leave us a like if you enjoyed this video, and tell us your opinion. Tell us what you thought, even if you thought we're a pair of hacks. Many people tell us, but preferably something nicer. Thanks a lot, guys. I will see you next time.